Welcome to the LibreQuest podcast. My name is Matt, and this is episode 52. Today I'm joined by author, web designer, and YouTube content creator, Tom from Switch to Linux. How are you, Tom?
I'm good, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being on the podcast with me today.
Absolutely. Love to be here.
So you create a lot of Linux content to help users switch to Linux, and I wanted to ask about your switch to Linux and why you made the switch.
Yeah, so I made the switch because of Windows 10. And I started to see the writing on the wall with a lot of technology, mobile phones coming in, and just everything wanting to integrate, be internet connected, web connected, and phone home. I was a web developer, or web designer rather, for a long time, and I'm happy and content using my little Adobe products and my little Microsoft Office on my little Windows 7 computer. And then Windows 10 comes out, and I'm like, y'all want to do what? Send all my usage data back? You want to read a list of my files? No, I'm not interested in that. And so I had played around with Linux a few years earlier, just as mostly out of an emergency case. And I remember I was like, where is that little thing called like Ubuntu or something floating around here somewhere? And end up going online, re-downloading Ubuntu. I think it was 16 by the time I kind of switched to it. So I've been using Linux Ubuntu 16 about. And that's the thing. I jumped into that and started poking around with different distributions. I'm like, this is so cool. This brings me back to the early days of computers where we had control. I could customize things. I could do with my computer what I want again. I got to tell other people about things. And that's how I created Switch to Linux.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad you did, because you do provide a lot of insight on a lot of topics, especially when you're doing your reviews of different distributions, and you really cover a lot of the parts that are kind of essential to really bring people over and make them feel comfortable, about moving over to Linux. And yeah, it's just really cool. And I also wanted to ask you, as a designer, what kind of tools do you use for your web design work?
So I pretty much just need a HTML editor, and there are a lot of options on Linux. The one I like the most is Bluefish, pretty much available on every Linux distribution, just installing Bluefish. And that gives you code completions. You can customize the colors, tell it which languages you're writing in, so it will help you autofill things. It doesn't have a true what you see, what you get view, but those have always sucked anyway. Just push F12 and load the thing in a web browser. It looks like. So Bluefish overall is the primary tool for getting the code written. Obviously, I do a lot of graphic manipulation for things today. So GIMP is what I use, and I used Photoshop before. I use GIMP now, and frankly, I couldn't be happier. I like GIMP better than Photoshop at this point. FileZilla, that's in every Linux repository as well, and password managers. Back on the old Windows days, I am guilty of putting clients' passwords for their stuff on text pads as they give them to me and stuff. And right now, as I switch my workflow to Linux on web design, everything is in a password manager. There is no file anywhere that has a password. It's not an encrypted file manager or password manager database file. So it's really streamlined things too. I don't have to flip around folders and find the text messages, open them up, whatever else. Everything is nice and secure in one spot. Those are primarily the tools that I use, since I do most. I'll do Joomla, WordPress, template theme design stuff, and I'll do a lot of CSS and content updates. Bluefish, FileZilla, GIMP, that covers about 90% of what I need.
So Bluefish, is that primarily for theming, like CSS? I'm not really familiar with it.
It is a wide spectrum web tool. So it'll autocomplete CSS, it'll autocomplete PHP, it'll autocomplete HTML, it'll autocomplete Perl, it'll pretty much every programming language that exists. You can set to do autocompletes, you can set to do colors inside of tags. So you can think of it as a very, very competent replacement for Dreamweaver.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it made me think of. I was wondering if it was like a Dreamweaver kind of equivalent like tool.
Pretty much the same thing. The
Okay.
only thing it doesn't do that Dreamweaver does that I know of is templates, but you can still copy and replace stuff through batch file processes as well. So it's pretty much taking care of everything I need.
Very cool. So you also have another YouTube channel. Can you talk about the content that you create over there?
Yeah, my other one is Christian. So that channel is called Our Walk in Christ. And that channel actually, it started as a blog when I was in grad school. It's kind of my diversion away from my petri dishes growing cancer cells in the lab where I worked at. And so I started a little Christian blog. Mostly I became a Christian right before I went to grad school, and I was pretty much using that to document my studies and my journey. And then it must have been, I don't know, about 5 years or so ago, 6 years ago or so, I started putting up some content on that. I did some, let it die a little bit, and I came back, and now we pretty much we do at least one video a week. Usually I try and target 2, and pretty soon we'll probably ramp it back up to 3 now that I'm done with a huge project we may cover later on here. But attached to that, I write books, all in Linux, of course. And pretty much my task there is just to teach people about what the Bible says. We're actually set apart a little bit from other Christian channels that we talk more about the Bible and less about other things in the world. So that's what that channel's about.
Okay, so as an author, you said you do Christian books, but do you also, you had mentioned you do like, you've done sci-fi as well as an author?
Yeah, I actually have one sci-fi book out, which I do want to, my original goal was to have at least a 3-part series, but other things got in the way of that, but I will be writing this. That book is called Synaptergy. You can find it on Amazon or anywhere else you can order your books. And that really takes a lot of the things that I have read about and even talk at times about on the Switch to Linux channel with privacy, with technology integration, and it asks these questions about the morals and ethics of utilizing technology, in this case, using technology and bioethics. That's what the book Synaptergy is about. So it is just an excellent, and it's a very family-friendly, easy to read book. I'm, as a Christian, I'm not big into cussing or things like that. So it's very good mature content. I'd say a young adult would enjoy it as well, or even an older kid would enjoy it as well. But that's that one. And I did another one which I gave out free, and I might release it on Amazon just to get a little bit of publicity. That was with the global current situation. I actually wrote a book last March called Lockdown. Released it for free, and maybe again I'll put it out on Amazon for paid for no other reason than the fact that I can promote a paid book. So I've done 2 in the dystopian sci-fi realm, other than my Christian works.
And you said that one book is called Synaptergy that's available on Amazon. How do you spell that?
That's Synaptergy.
Awesome. And so I've noticed you often cover topics of system security, and I wanted to know, is there a particular Linux distribution that you would recommend that you believe is best in terms of system security?
Yeah, I look at security and privacy as kind of the reverse sides of the coin. So I look at both things. The best one overall in that is Cubes, although it is quite a bit harder to use. But Cubes itself, it isolates itself into separate pockets explicitly to be security and privacy focused, including having disposable VMs. You get a weird email, you want to open it up and see what it does. You can open up a disposable VM, and whatever happens, the VM close it. And forever. It's gone forever. So Cubes is absolutely top-notch on security, and with the tip of the hat to privacy. As each individual separate VM it spins up, you can tell it explicitly, you can put this one through ClearNet, but I want you to root this machine through Tor. And so it has a really good way of isolating itself for security and for privacy.
Okay.
Although it's a little bit harder to do. I have an old series about it, and I would like to do a series on that too. The other one that comes to mind is Tails, designed to run off of a live Whatever you do in there will disappear as soon as you shut the computer down. Turn it back up. That's what Tails is. I forget exactly what it stands for, but it's basically anonymity type thing. It's an acronym. Anonymity is in there.
Okay. Your audio is kind of dropping out a little bit. You were describing the virtual machine for opening, or temporary virtual machine for opening, like as an example, an email, and your audio kind of cut out at that point. Could you say that part again? I apologize.
Sure. That's in Cubes. So Cubes has the ability to create a variety of different isolated virtual machines that are separate from one another. And in this case, you can create what's called a disposable VM. Whatever happens in that disposable VM, when you shut that VM down, it's just gone for. So you can use it as a way to sandbox applications, or if you think somebody's sending you a phishing scam, you can look at it and poke around at it and see what it is. That's part of Cubes.
Okay, that's awesome. So, yeah, that does sound cool. I mean, it certainly sounds handy because like you said, you never know. Like, especially if you get a suspicious looking, like this is from a bank or something where it's supposed to be official, you just don't know. You can't really ever be sure on email. But one topic that I'm pretty excited to ask you about, because we talked about this a little bit, is you're working on a mobile Linux office. And I was wondering if you could talk about the hardware and software that you're using for this project.
Sure. So this is relating to, if you followed my channel, this is a super secret project. And if you haven't caught the news live, you haven't heard anything about it yet. But upcoming information very, very soon, possibly even the day this podcast goes out. We'll talk about it. So what I've been doing is building up a mobile office to take all of my work on the road. And I'm leaving behind the apartment here and making sure that I have everything to get my work done to see the country, just see it all, enjoy it all, and take it in, not just go and see it from the parking lot and go, that's neat, but I'm too old to hike it, So inside that van, we have a lot of different components. One of those is a IoT-grade cellular internet platform. So that is by Sierra Wireless. It's called the LX40 AirLink. And it is one piece of hardware. You can reflash the firmware for any of the major carriers, pop a SIM card in it. You can get really good internet most places. Couple that with a little cellular antenna on top of the van, and I get a little bit of boost signal there as well. That will feed into my pfSense router, which is a full custom ad blocking, network blocking platform that allows me to get in there and basically purely with Wi-Fi and connections. That goes into a switch, and I actually have maybe not, but probably one of the few vans out there with an Ethernet port built into the wall. Why not,
That's awesome.
I will be having my main processing computer in there, the old Ryzen 5 in there, which will run perfectly fine off the level of power I can run in there. But everything else that I'm building in is all designed to run off of DC circuit. So I've been ordering parts and assembling power adapters to convert 12-volt battery banks into DC circuits required to run computer equipment. So all the different computer equipment that we have in there, of course, we have the new Dell that I did a review of on the channel a few weeks ago. The reason I swapped out that big old tower I had with that little Dell is that little Dell runs on only 90 watts of power, and that's really good power consumption. So that is a good computer. In fact, that's the one we're recording this on right now. That guy gets plugged into some monitors. We have a dual monitor display in there, and my primary work computer is now a Raspberry Pi. So we have a Raspberry Pi running off of that, and then we also have another Raspberry Pi as a media center. We have another one, which is my network attached storage, and we have another one as a live PHP server inside my van. So that is a little bit about the computer equipment in there. And as far as software, we have pfSense, we have Open Media Vault for the NAS. We're running Manjaro on the Raspberry Pi. We're running, I think we're running OpenELEC on the one Kodi box. I remember, I think it's OpenELEC on that one. I think it's, no, it's open source media. And then, of course, I do have a RetroPie as well, because you got to have your old video. So
Right.
that's some of the technology I have with thing. All that's run off of a custom-built 200 amp hour lithium-ion battery with 500 watts of solar.
So just curious on the power source, are you using like making your power banks out of 18650s?
I have Fortune 3.6 volt lithium. What are they? Lithium phosphate cells.
Okay.
So I have 8 of those, and I put them into parallel groups of 2 to jump those from 100 amp up to 200 amp block cells. And then we seriesed those together to get the 12 volt 200 amp hour cell. And then they were actually able to sell me a 200 amp BMS. So I actually have the ability to flow up to a 200 watt inverter up there too.
Okay, so that was another question I had. Are you like going to be running an inverter for these things and boosting those to 120, or like you said, are you going to be running the majority of it just directly off the cells in 12 volts? Because that's really interesting.
So yeah, because you lose when you're running an inverter, even a good inverter, you will still lose about 10 to 15% efficiency. And for that reason, I'm running everything that can possibly be run off of the battery directly. So what you do is you use a series of buck converters. So for like $10 on Amazon, you can actually get specifically built for Raspberry Pis. You can get Raspberry Pi 12 volt to Raspberry Pi power adapter buck converters that already have the power supply outputs. So you just tie them right into your battery and use them, and you're good.
Yeah, that's really nice because, like you said, yeah, when you do any kind of conversion, especially when you're boosting up, you're going to be using, like you said, like 10 or 15% of the power just converting that, and so
and you're going to lose some on the AC conversion, and you're going to lose some on the step up conversion. You're not going to lose as much on the step down conversions, but you'll lose a little bit. So really, one of the things I've been doing is trying to prioritize finding things on the 12 volt circuits already, which increases the efficiency. So originally I wanted to do the ACE PC micro PC, which is runs off of a 12 volt with a standard power port. Unfortunately, those things are built like crap. So it came broken. I sent it back, and I got the Dell. The Dell, unfortunately, they have a weird proprietary power outlet. So it took me an hour to figure out how to hack that thing to make it work. But we got it working. That just required a 19 volt step up converter. So we're going from 12 volt out of the battery bank through a DC box, and then we're going up into 19 volts. Now they call for 19.5, but really the 0.5 volt difference is significant for a computer. So we're running that up into 19. And the only other thing I think I'm stepping up is one monitor. Monitors oftentimes run at 12 or at 19 as well. But by a piece of serendipity, one of the monitors I already have in my office is actually a 12 volt circuit. So that one just plugs right into the battery. The other one, I have another step up converter for.
Yeah, that's very nice. So are you like digging through data sheets on your different electronics and trying to figure out what part to bypass and all that?
No, you don't need to.
Oh, you don't need. Okay.
No, circuitry will do that automatically as long as you're. So really the only thing that's not pushing out the exact voltage that the power adapter asks for is the Dell computer. But the thing is, I've been running it for a long time anyway on 19 volts. It's fine. So it won't have a problem. And then, like I said, the Raspberry Pis, there's converters that output exactly what Raspberry Pis need. So we don't have a problem with that either.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, I guess I'm about ready to wrap it up over here. Thank you again, Tom, for being here. Where can listeners find your content online? I know you're at Switch to Linux on YouTube, but are you on any other platforms like Odyssey or anywhere like that?
Yeah, so Switch to Linux is on YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble. And we put some stuff on Joshua when I can remember. So those are the places you can find us. Of course, switchtolinux.com, which is the site's getting a little out of disarray. We paused redesigning it to work on the van. But now that's done, we're getting back to that. So we will have a better website at switchtolinux.com soon. social media, we are on Gab, Twitter, Minds. We're on Mastodon on the Fosstodon servers. Fosstodon. I think we have Reddit and creation.social. Creation.social, I think I have one account, and that's under Our Walking Christ. So that channel is at Rumble, YouTube, and occasionally on BitChute. We've been having issues with the uploader, and I'm not sure if they yet, but I'll try again. And then, of course, we have Twitter, Gab, and Minds, and Reddit, sort of.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was great talking to you and hearing about your really cool project that you're working on.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and we will talk to you again soon.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can join me on Locals at LibreQuest.locals.com, where I'll be posting exclusive interviews, some of my music, and other things, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about as well. For other ways to support me, you can visit LibreQuest.org, that's LibreQuest.org, and thank you for being a listener. Until next time, I'm Matt, and this is LibreQuest.